across a land where fire fades and shadows stretch endlessly. Entire kingdoms have risen, crumbled, and been forgotten by time. Tonight, we'll drift slowly through that dying world, the complete lore of Dark Souls 3. From the first linking of the fire to the last embers flickering at the edge of existence. Welcome to Games Lore to Sleep, where we wander through long, quiet stories of fallen gods, ashen warriors, and broken thrones, so you can rest, relax, or simply let your thoughts fade like a dying flame. If you enjoy these calm journeys through dark and distant worlds, feel free to follow the channel and return for future bedtime tales. Now settle in, breathe gently, and let the slow, somber age of fire and ash unfold softly around you as we begin the long, quiet chronicle of the world of Dark Souls 3. To understand the depths of the story that unfolds in Dark Souls 3, we must first comprehend the cosmic forces that shape the world, forces that stretch back to the very beginning of time itself. It is in these primordial moments that the foundation for the Age of Fire was laid, a time where light, darkness, life, and death all began to intertwine, giving birth to a world that would forever be defined by struggle. Before the Age of Fire, the world existed in an eternal state of monotony and stillness. The world was a place of eternal fog and shadow, a land ruled by ancient immortal dragons who existed in an eternal balance with the land itself. The concept of life and death was non-existent, as these dragons were neither truly alive nor truly dead. The land was a timeless void, a place where nothing grew and nothing perished. This was the Age of Ancients, a time before fire, before light, before anything resembling the world we know. However, this unchanging world was forever altered when the first flame was born. This flame was no ordinary fire, it was a cosmic event that would shape the fate of the world. From its light came the division of all things, light and dark, life and death, heat and cold. From the darkness of the flame, the first beings arose, the Lords, creatures born from the depths of this newfound fire. Each one would play a vital role in the story that would unfold. The first among them was Gwyn, the future Lord of Sunlight, who wielded the power of lightning. Gwyn's powers were enough to strip the dragons of their immortal scales, ending their reign over the land and ushering in the Age of Fire. Gwyn's arrival brought with it an undeniable sense of purpose. He was to be the force that would challenge the old order and bring about the new age. But this was not done without sacrifice. Gwyn used his light to burn away the dragons, cleansing the land and allowing life to thrive. Alongside Gwyn was the Witch of Izalith, a powerful sorceress who commanded fire itself, wielding chaos and flame with devastating results. The witch, with her mastery of fire, became a key figure in the shaping of the world. Her powers allowed her to create life, but also to destroy it, as her attempts to control fire led to disastrous consequences, eventually giving birth to the Chaos Flame, a source of great corruption and suffering. The third of the great lords was Nito, the first of the dead, who commanded the forces of death itself. Nito ruled over the dead and was the source of decay and mortality in the world. His power was one of inevitability, for all things must eventually return to death. Nito's realm was one of eternal darkness, where the forces of death could never be fully escaped. It was in this realm that the dead were claimed, and where the eternal cycle of life and death began. Lastly, in the shadows of these other great beings, there was the furtive pygmy, a figure whose significance was not immediately recognized. This small, seemingly insignificant being found the Dark Soul, a fragment of the first flame that would come to define humanity's very existence. The Dark Soul was the embodiment of humanity's potential, containing both the light and the darkness that made humanity unique. This soul would serve as the foundation for all of humanity's struggles, its rise and fall, and its ultimate fate. The four lords, Gwyn, the Witch of Izalith, Neto, and the furtive pygmy, came together in a war against the dragons, each bringing their unique power to the battle. Gwyn led the charge with his lightning, the witch wielded fire, Neto brought death, and the furtive pygmy, though quiet, provided the dark soul, the essence of humanity's potential. Their combined strength was enough to defeat the dragons and usher in a new age, the Age of Fire. But as with all flames, the first flame began to fade. The Age of Fire, once a time of prosperity and light, began to wane, and with it came the inevitable passage to a new age, the Age of Dark. To prevent this, Gwyn made a desperate choice. Rather than allow the first flame to die and usher in the Age of Dark, Gwyn threw himself into the flame, sacrificing himself to reignite it. In doing so, Gwyn became the first Lord of Cinder, a being whose soul was forever bound to the flame, sustaining it for generations to come. This act, however, was not without consequence. By linking the fire, Gwyn became a living embodiment of sacrifice, a figure doomed to remain within the flame, keeping the light alive at the cost of his own humanity. This act of selflessness, while prolonging the Age of Fire, set in motion a cycle of tragedy and sacrifice that would play out for eons. The flame, though rekindled, would continue to fade with time, and with each passing era, champions would rise to relink it, each time sacrificing themselves to maintain the light. Each champion who linked the fire became a Lord of Cinder, their essence fusing with the flame itself, becoming a part of the eternal struggle to keep the fire burning. Thus the cycle continued, each generation facing the same choices, to link the fire and maintain the Age of Light, or to let the flame fade and usher in the Age of Dark. The struggle between these two forces, the light of the first flame and the darkness of the unknown, defined the very nature of existence in the world of Dark Souls 3. By the time of our story, the flame had been linked so many times that it was on the brink of exhaustion. The world itself was in a state of decay. Kingdoms from different eras began to converge, the fabric of reality itself starting to unravel. The world was no longer the thriving land it once was. It was a dying place, filled with ruins, broken cities, and fading memories of the glory that had once been. It is in this decaying world that our story begins, in the kingdom of Lothric. The bells rang to awaken the Lords of Cinder from their eternal rest, but something was wrong. The lords refused to fulfill their duty of linking the fire. In their absence, the Ashen One, a being not cursed with undeath in the traditional sense, but rather a remnant of those who once sought to link the flame but failed, awakens to a world in desperate need of a hero. As the Ashen One awakens in the graveyard known as the Cemetery of Ash, they are far from the traditional heroes of the Dark Souls world. Unlike the undead beings of past tales, who were cursed to wander forever in search of purpose, the Ashen One is something different entirely. They are the remnants of those who once sought to link the flame but were found wanting. Their attempts failed, and their existence reduced to ash. The Unkindled, as they are known, are neither fully dead nor truly alive. They exist in a strange limbo, vessels for souls, capable of absorbing the power of defeated foes in ways even typical undead cannot. This unique nature, however, makes the Ashen One particularly well suited for the monumental task ahead, hunting down the Lords of Cinder, the once great figures who had abandoned their thrones and their duty to the flame. Unlike previous heroes who sacrificed themselves for the flame, these Lords of Cinder have all but forsaken their purpose. The Lords of Cinder were once the champions of light, figures who had been chosen to link the fire, becoming one with its essence. Over time, however, their once noble motives grew twisted and self-serving. Some grew corrupt, others lost their way, and some even abandoned their thrones altogether. The world had grown weak from the many cycles of flame linking, and the lords, in their exhaustion, had abandoned the eternal task. Our journey begins at Firelink Shrine, a place that serves as both a resting point and a place of contemplation. Here, the Firekeeper, a mysterious and silent figure, tends to the bonfires, offering guidance to the Ashen One as they prepare for the trials that lie ahead. The shrine exists in a state of temporal ambiguity, connected to various points in time and space, making it a constant presence through the cycles of fire. It is here that the Ashen One encounters Ludleth of Corland, the last Lord of Cinder, who willingly stays at his throne. Ludleth, unlike his peers, does not shy away from his duty. He is a small, shriveled figure, but his acceptance of his role as a Lord of Cinder makes him unique among the others who have abandoned their posts. Ludleth speaks of transposition, a mysterious art that reshapes souls into new forms. His dialogue reveals that the choice to link the fire is not always noble or virtuous. Sometimes it is simply the lesser of two evils, a choice made when all other options seem unthinkable. Ludleth understands the weight of the fire's flame, and his willingness to accept it speaks to the acceptance of suffering that has come to define the Lords of Cinder. As the Ashen One rests at Firelink Shrine, it becomes clear that their journey is not one of mere destiny or fate, but of necessity. The world is slowly dying, and without the Lords of Cinder, the flame cannot be properly rekindled. Each Lord of Cinder holds a fragment of the first flame, and without these fragments, the flame cannot be relinked. The Firekeeper shares the purpose of the Ashen One's mission, to retrieve the lost Lords of Cinder, each of whom has fallen from grace in their own way. Some have become monsters of their own making, while others have simply grown weary of their never-ending duty. But none of them can be allowed to remain absent for long, for without them, the flame will die, and the world will slip into darkness. In the first stage of this journey, the Ashen One must seek out the first Lord of Cinder, Aldrich, Saint of the Deep, a former cleric who became a Lord of Cinder, not through virtuous actions, but through power and consumption. Aldrich's story is one of twisted ambition. Once a man of faith, Aldrich grew obsessed with visions of a world submerged in deep water, where only the faithful would survive in the dark depths of the ocean. This vision led him to establish the Cathedral of the Deep, a religious movement centered around decay and consumption as natural parts of existence. Aldrich's path to becoming a Lord of Cinder was a dark one, defined by a growing hunger that led him to devour human flesh. This grotesque act of cannibalism was not born of madness, but rather a twisted sense of purpose, driven by his belief in the necessity of decay as a part of the world's natural order. The irony of Aldrich's rise is that he became a Lord of Cinder, not because of his virtue, but because of his immense power. As the Ashen One ventures into the Cathedral of the Deep, they will encounter Aldrich, now a mass of writhing sludge, a grotesque parody of what he once was. His body has been consumed by the dark forces he once sought to master, and his very form now embodies the decay he so eagerly embraced. In a tragic twist, Aldrich has become an unrecognizable monster, using the power he gained from devouring the gods to fight the Ashen One. The fight against Aldrich is both a literal and metaphorical battle, as the player must confront not only the monstrosity he has become, but also the dangerous philosophy he represents. The struggle against Aldrich is not just about defeating an enemy, but about confronting the philosophy of decay and stagnation that he represents. The Ashen One is not merely a passive observer in this world. They are active participants in shaping its future, tasked with making the difficult decisions that will ultimately determine the fate of all. Defeating Aldrich is a critical step in this journey, as his death will pave the way for the next Lord of Cinder to be brought to their throne. But even in victory, questions about the true nature of the Lords of Cinder linger. Are they heroes who have fallen from grace, or are they merely pawns in a much larger cosmic game, doomed to perpetuate the same cycles of fire and darkness over and over again? After defeating Aldrich, the Ashen One's journey continues across a world slowly slipping into oblivion, as kingdoms and landscapes from different eras begin to merge into one another. The next stage of the Ashen One's quest takes them to Farron Keep, a swampland and the domain of the Abyss Watchers, the once proud warriors of the Undead Legion. This area is drenched in sorrow and decay, a tragic reminder of the corruption that had taken hold of the Legion itself. The Abyss Watchers are among the most tragic figures in all of Dark Souls 3. They were once a noble order of knights, formed to combat the growing threat of the Abyss, a dark and corrupting force that threatened to consume everything in its path. The Watchers were inspired by Artorias the Abyss Walker, the legendary knight from the original Dark Souls, who fell to the Abyss. Their mission was clear: to protect the world from the spread of the Abyss, hunting down its creatures and preventing it from taking hold. However, the Abyss Watchers did not simply emulate Artorias, they took his legacy further, making it their life's work to battle the Abyss in all its forms. They consumed the mystical wolf blood, a substance that bonded their souls together, giving them a supernatural connection. This bond allowed them to fight as one, sharing skills and knowledge among the entire Legion, anticipating each other's moves with uncanny precision. This mystical link made them one of the most formidable forces in the world. But as noble as their mission was, the Abyss Watchers were doomed by their own power. The wolf blood that once united them began to dry up, and with the loss of this essential bond, the Legion's unity started to fracture. The once united warriors began to succumb to the very abyss they had sworn to fight. The corruption once held at bay began to seep into their ranks, and many of the Watchers became mindless monsters, driven only by the very forces they had once fought so fiercely to contain. As the Ashen One makes their way through the swampy landscape of Farron Keep, they are confronted by the Abyss Watchers, now scattered and in various states of corruption. Some remain pure, holding on to the honor of their original purpose, while others have fallen completely, their souls lost to the Abyss. This internal struggle among the Watchers is painfully evident, as they fight each other endlessly in an attempt to purify themselves, only to be pulled back into the chaos again and again. The battle between the pure and the corrupted Watchers is not one of victory or defeat, it is an eternal cycle, a tragic reminder that even the noblest of intentions can lead to disaster. The Ashen One's confrontation with the Abyss Watchers is one of the most emotionally complex battles in the game. Initially, the Ashen One faces the uncorrupted Watchers, fighting alongside them to defeat the fallen ones. But as the battle intensifies, the tragic reality sets in. There is no salvation for any of the Watchers. They are bound together in a cycle of violence and death, unable to break free from the very corruption they were sworn to destroy. The Ashen One must decide: do they side with the pure Watchers in their final attempt to rid the world of the Abyss, or do they face the overwhelming reality that the Abyss Watchers have already lost their battle? As the battle draws to a close, the uncorrupted Watchers join forces to bring down their corrupted comrades. But even this victory is hollow. The Watchers' shared soul means that even in death, they cannot find peace. They are bound in an endless cycle of betrayal and violence, unable to escape the very darkness they once fought against. In the final phase of the battle, all the fallen Watchers contribute their power to create one last champion, a being of pure flame and determination, the last hope of the undead legion. This final watcher fights with desperation, wielding fire as a weapon against the Ashen One. Even in their madness, they cling to the remnants of their original purpose, to contain the Abyss at any cost. When the Ashen One finally triumphs over the Abyss Watchers, the victory feels bittersweet. The Watchers, once heroes, have become tragic figures whose very nature doomed them to fall. Their story is a reflection of one of Dark Souls 3's central themes, that even the noblest intentions can lead to corruption when dealing with forces far beyond mortal understanding. The Abyss Watchers gave everything to protect the world, but in the end, their sacrifice was not enough to prevent their downfall. The fate of the Abyss Watchers serves as a reminder of the inherent danger in dealing with such immense cosmic forces. They were a noble order, united in purpose, but their decision to wield the power of the wolf blood ultimately led to their destruction. The story of the Abyss Watchers is one of tragic heroism, a tale of warriors who sacrificed everything to protect the world, only to be consumed by the very darkness they fought against. For the Ashen One, the battle against the Abyss Watchers is not merely a fight for survival. It is a confrontation with the very nature of heroism and sacrifice. In defeating the Watchers, the Ashen One is faced with a harsh reality that even the greatest heroes can fall, and that the cycle of fire and dark, life and death, may never truly end. The journey of the Ashen One takes them deeper into the dark heart of the world, where even the mightiest of beings have fallen to their own burdens. After defeating the Abyss Watchers, the Ashen One's path leads to the profaned capital, a place of strange architecture and an ancient, once proud kingdom. It is here that they will confront Yhorm the Giant, the third of the Lords of Cinder. Yhorm's story is one of tragic loss, a tale not of corruption or madness, but of a ruler destroyed by forces far beyond his control. Yhorm the Giant, unlike the other Lords of Cinder, did not fall to ambition or madness. He was once a just and noble king, chosen by his people to lead them in an age of prosperity. Yhorm hailed from the ancient lineage of giants, a race of colossal beings who once roamed the land, their strength unparalleled. Yet, unlike many of his kind, Yhorm was not a ruler of fear and dominance. He ruled with compassion and wisdom, earning the love and respect of his people. He was a giant among giants, a leader who sought to bring peace rather than war, and understanding rather than conquest. Yhorm's reign was marked by prosperity and peace for his people, who trusted him as their king. But in time, things began to change. The profane flame, a mystical and destructive force, began to take root within the kingdom, threatening to consume everything in its path. The origins of the profane flame are shrouded in mystery, but its influence on the land was undeniable. It was a fire unlike any other, one that burned without purpose, without end, and without control. It threatened to destroy not only the profaned capital, but the very fabric of existence itself. In an attempt to save his kingdom, Yhorm made a fateful decision. He chose to link the first flame, a choice that was both noble and desperate. The linking of the fire was a sacrifice, one that could have potentially saved his people and his land, but it was a sacrifice that failed to produce the desired results. The profaned flame remained, and the kingdom of the giants was consumed by it. In his attempt to quell the raging fire, Yhorm's people were destroyed. The flame ravaged the land, leaving the kingdom in ruins and killing nearly every living being. Yhorm, as the sole survivor, was left to face the harsh reality that his efforts to save his people had failed. His city lay in ruins, his people were gone, and the very kingdom he had sought to protect was lost. But the fire would not extinguish, and neither would the weight of Yhorm's failure. In the years that followed, he became a Lord of Cinder, a being whose soul was bound to the flame, forced to relink it for eternity. But unlike the other Lords of Cinder, Yhorm did not choose his fate. He did not willingly accept the burden of the flame, but rather he was thrust into it by his own actions, by his desire to protect his people. In the end, his act of selflessness became his undoing, as he was consumed by the flame he had hoped to extinguish. The Ashen One's encounter with Yhorm the Giant is not just another battle. It is a confrontation with the very essence of heroism and failure. Yhorm is not a monster to be vanquished, but a tragic figure who has already suffered the greatest loss imaginable. His once great kingdom is now nothing more than a memory, a place of ash and ruin. The Giant King, now a Lord of Cinder, is no longer the ruler he once was. He is a being consumed by regret and despair, forced to live with the consequences of his own actions. As the Ashen One approaches Yhorm's throne, they find the once great king sitting amidst the ruins of his city. His massive form sits motionless, his great sword resting against his side. The scene is one of heartbreaking desolation. Yhorm is not an evil being, but one who has been broken by the weight of his own choices. The very fire he sought to extinguish has consumed him, and he is now nothing more than a shadow of the king he once was. When the Ashen One finally confronts Yhorm, the battle that ensues is one of epic proportions. The giant, though weakened by time and sorrow, is still a formidable opponent. His massive size and strength make him an imposing figure, and his sword, Storm Ruler, is a weapon of unimaginable power. But even as Yhorm swings his great weapon, there is no malice in his actions. He is not fighting because he desires victory, but because he knows no other way to end his suffering. The Ashen One must face the heartbreaking reality that they are not simply fighting to defeat an enemy, they are fighting to end the suffering of a once great king who has lost everything. The battle is not one of pure conflict, but of mercy, as the Ashen One delivers the final blow to Yhorm, freeing him from his eternal torment. The victory over Yhorm the Giant is one of bittersweet triumph. Unlike the other Lords of Cinder, whose defeat brings a sense of justice or righteousness, Yhorm's death is a tragic end to a hero's journey. His sacrifice, though noble, was in vain, and his people are lost forever. The profane flame continues to burn, and the kingdom he fought to protect remains in ruin. But even in his death, Yhorm's story serves as a reminder of the cost of heroism, of the sacrifices made by those who fight for the greater good, only to see their efforts undone. The Ashen One's journey through the profane capital and their confrontation with Yhorm serves as a poignant reflection on the themes of sacrifice and failure that permeate the world of Dark Souls 3. Yhorm's story is one of the most tragic in the entire game, a tale of a king who sought to protect his people but ultimately became a Lord of Cinder, bound to the very flame he sought to extinguish. In the end, Yhorm is not a villain, but a tragic hero whose fate was sealed by his own noble intentions. The Ashen One's journey leads them back to the heart of the kingdom, the towering Lothric castle, where the fate of the world teeters on the edge of a knife. The castle stands as a symbol of the once great kingdom, a place filled with history, but now draped in ruin and despair. It is here that the final Lords of Cinder await, and the Ashen One's path will inevitably bring them face to face with Lothric, the last prince of the kingdom, and his twin brother, Laurentius. The kingdom of Lothric was once one of the most powerful and prosperous realms in all the land, with a royal bloodline marked by strength and nobility. The two brothers, Lothric and Laurentius, were raised to fulfill a singular purpose, to become the ultimate Lords of Cinder, to link the first flame, and to continue the cycle of fire that had defined the world for so long. Their birth was no accident. Each of them was meticulously crafted to ensure the perpetuation of this duty. But fate, as it often does, has a way of twisting even the most carefully laid plans. Lothric, the younger of the two brothers, was groomed from birth to become the ideal Lord of Cinder. His very existence was a part of a carefully orchestrated plan by his royal family to ensure the continuation of the Age of Fire. However, there was a flaw in this grand design. Lothric was weak, frail, and sickly from birth, unable to bear the weight of the fire that was meant to sustain the world. His body could not withstand the immense strain of linking the first flame, and he struggled against his destiny with every breath he took. While Lothric was born weak, his older brother, Laurentius, was everything his younger sibling was not. Laurentius was tall, strong, and skilled in combat, the perfect warrior who had already proven his worth by defeating the demon prince in single combat. Laurentius was everything the kingdom could have hoped for in a prince, a fighter who could protect the realm with his strength. And yet, despite his physical prowess, Laurentius was bound by the curse that tied his life to Lothric's. The two brothers were bound by a mystical curse, one that linked their souls together in an unbreakable bond. Laurentius, though physically superior to his brother, was fated to live and die alongside Lothric, sharing in both his frailty and strength. As Lothric grew older, his condition worsened, and it became increasingly clear that the younger prince would never be able to fulfill his destiny. The fire that was meant to burn in his chest, to carry the flame of the first flame, was too much for him to bear. And yet, he was bound by his royal bloodline to do just that, to sacrifice himself for the greater good of the kingdom and the world itself. But Lothric rebelled. In an act of defiance, he refused to fulfill his duty as the next Lord of Cinder. Rather than sacrificing himself to link the fire, he chose to hide away in the castle, retreating from the duty he was born to fulfill. He locked himself away with Laurentius, and together the two brothers waited for the world to come to them. Lothric refused to accept his fate, believing that the Age of Fire was doomed to repeat itself endlessly. His rejection of the flame was not born out of malice, but out of a deep philosophical belief that the world needed to change, to evolve beyond the cycle of flame and darkness. The refusal of Lothric to fulfill his duty as the Lord of Cinder set in motion a series of events that would have far-reaching consequences. The kingdom of Lothric began to crumble without the leadership of the royal family. The kingdom's knights, once proud defenders of the realm, had no clear purpose without their prince to guide them. The Grand Archives, once a place of knowledge and scholarship, became a site of dangerous experimentation as scholars sought new ways to address the growing crisis. The kingdom, once a beacon of hope, now teetered on the brink of collapse. The Ashen One's journey through Lothric Castle is one filled with tension and sorrow as they make their way toward the twin princes, whose fate is intertwined with the fate of the world itself. The brothers are not simply two figures standing in the way of the Ashen One's quest. They are a reflection of the larger themes that run throughout the game. The tension between destiny and free will, the weight of legacy, and the consequences of refusing the flame. When the Ashen One finally reaches the twin princes in their throne room, the scene is one of quiet resignation. Lothric stands as a broken shell of what he was meant to be. His frail body barely supports him, and he refuses to acknowledge the duty that was thrust upon him. His brother, Laurentius, remains loyal to his younger sibling, standing by his side despite the physical torment that his body has endured. Laurentius's body, once strong and mighty, is now a twisted reflection of the flames that have consumed him. He is bound to his brother both physically and spiritually, in a bond that neither can escape. The confrontation between the Ashen One and the twin princes is one of the most emotionally complex in the entire game. The Ashen One is not simply fighting against evil, but against the tragic nature of fate itself. Lothric has chosen to reject his destiny, and in doing so, he has brought the world to the brink of destruction. Laurentius, bound by his love for his brother, fights to protect him, even though he knows that their actions are futile. The brothers are not villains, but victims of a cruel fate, a fate that forces them to sacrifice everything, even their very lives, for the continuation of a dying cycle. In the first phase of the battle, Laurentius fights with desperation, wielding his flaming sword with the fury of a man who has nothing left to lose. His attacks are swift and powerful, fueled by a deep sense of loyalty to his brother. But when Laurentius falls, the true battle begins. Lothric reveals his true power, using his sorcery to resurrect his brother and fight alongside him. The battle between the Ashen One and the Twin Princes is not a fight of simple good versus evil. It is a battle between duty and conscience, between the weight of tradition and the need for change. The final phase of the battle is a tragic one, as Laurentius and Lothric fight together in a desperate attempt to protect their world from the Ashen One. But even in their final moments, the brothers show no regret for their actions. Lothric is at peace with his decision, believing that the world must change, even if it means the end of the Age of Fire. Laurentius, ever loyal, accepts his fate, knowing that his brother's rebellion is the only way to break the cycle that has defined the world for so long. With the defeat of the Twin Princes and the decision made regarding the fate of the First Flame, the Ashen One's journey brings them to the kiln of the First Flame, the final resting place of the First Flame itself. This is not just a place, it is the very heart of existence, where the world itself was born and where it will ultimately come to an end. The kiln of the First Flame is a barren, ashen wasteland, a place where the past and future collide in a devastating culmination of sacrifice, hope, and despair. The final challenge lies within the soul of Cinder, a being not of flesh, but of memory. The soul of Cinder is not one single being, but the collective essence of all those who have ever sacrificed themselves to link the fire. Each Lord of Cinder, from Gwyn to the most recent champion, has contributed their soul to this final entity. The soul of Cinder is the culmination of every hero, every lord, every sacrifice that has ever been made to prolong the Age of Fire. As the Ashen One steps into the kiln of the First Flame, they are not simply stepping into a final arena of combat. They are entering a place where the very fabric of reality seems to stretch thin, where the weight of countless ages presses down on the soul. The soul of Cinder is not merely a foe to be defeated, but a manifestation of the cosmic forces that have governed the world for millennia. The soul of Cinder appears before the Ashen One, a towering figure shrouded in flame and smoke, wielding the very essence of the First Flame. Its form is constantly shifting, taking on the appearance of various champions who have come before. It uses weapons that represent the different heroes who have linked the fire: straight swords, curved blades, staves, and pyromancy, each one a reminder of the many sacrifices made over the ages. This battle is not just about physical strength or skill, it is a battle against the very concept of the cycle itself. The soul of Cinder embodies everything that the Ashen One has fought against throughout their journey: the endless linking of the fire, the repetition of the same sacrifices, and the continuation of an age that has long since begun to decay. Each strike the Ashen One makes against the soul of Cinder is not just a physical blow, but a symbolic one. Each cut is a strike against the very system that has perpetuated suffering for so long. As the battle rages on, the soul of Cinder transforms, shifting its form to reflect the different champions who have come before. The first phase of the battle is a confrontation with Gwyn's power, wielding lightning and a great sword. The Soul of Cinder is not simply copying the moves of these past champions, it is channeling their memories and their essence, each phase of the battle representing a different aspect of the heroes who have come before. The second phase of the battle brings forth the power of pyromancy, a tribute to the Witch of Izalith and her ability to wield fire and chaos. The Soul of Cinder uses flame and fire with devastating accuracy, summoning fiery projectiles and creating walls of flame that threaten to engulf the Ashen One. The battle is relentless, as each transformation brings a new challenge and a new threat. The third phase sees the Soul of Cinder using a curved sword and sorcery, a reference to the many knights and sorcerers who have sacrificed themselves in the name of the First Flame. The Ashen One is forced to adapt, shifting tactics to deal with the different forms the Soul of Cinder takes, constantly adjusting to the ever-changing nature of the battle. The Soul of Cinder is a being of tremendous power, but it is also a tragic figure. It is not a force of evil, but a force of duty. It exists to serve the flame, to perpetuate the cycle that has defined the world for so long. Yet, in its existence, it has become a prisoner of that very cycle, forever bound to the flame, forever repeating the same actions and sacrifices that have come before. The Soul of Cinder is not an enemy that can simply be defeated by force. It is an embodiment of the very system that the Ashen One is trying to break. As the Ashen One finally delivers the final blow, the Soul of Cinder fades away, its form crumbling into nothingness. But its death is not a victory. The Soul of Cinder is not a villain to be vanquished. It is a representation of the impossible choices that have defined the world. The Ashen One has defeated the Soul of Cinder, but they have not defeated the cycle. The flame still flickers, and the world is still dying. The Soul of Cinder's death is a poignant moment in the game, one that forces the player to confront the very nature of heroism and sacrifice. The Ashen One has triumphed over the Soul of Cinder, but in doing so, they have not solved the fundamental problem of the world. The flame still burns, but it is weak, and its continued existence is uncertain. The Ashen One must now decide what to do with the flame, whether to perpetuate the cycle and link it once more, or to allow the flame to die and bring an end to the Age of Fire. The kiln of the First Flame serves as the ultimate battleground, not just for the Ashen One, but for the future of the world. In this place, the very essence of existence is called into question. The battle against the Soul of Cinder is not just a physical confrontation, it is a philosophical one. The Ashen One must decide whether the world is worth saving, or whether the cycle should finally be broken. The Soul of Cinder, in its final moments, is not a defeated enemy, but a symbol of the cosmic struggle that has defined the world. Its death is not a triumph, but a recognition that the cycle has come to its end. The Ashen One stands before the First Flame, ready to make the ultimate decision, to link the fire, to let it die, or to usurp it entirely. With the defeat of the Soul of Cinder, the Ashen One now stands before the First Flame, the very heart of the world, where all things began and where they will ultimately end. This final confrontation is not merely physical, it is a battle for the soul of existence itself. The flame, though weakened, still burns with the remnants of countless sacrifices made by heroes and lords before. But as the flame flickers and the world decays, one question lingers. Should the cycle continue? Or is it time for the flame to die and make way for something new? The choice presented to the Ashen One is monumental. For centuries, the flame has been linked, reigniting the Age of Fire each time it begins to fade. Lords of Cinder, chosen champions, and those deemed worthy by fate have sacrificed their lives to prolong this age. Each link has been a moment of tragedy and selflessness, yet also one of inevitable decay. The fire, like all things, is destined to burn out, The more it is linked, the weaker it becomes, until it reaches the point where it can no longer sustain the world. This is the reality that the Ashen One faces, a decaying flame and a dying world. But there are options. The Ashen One's first choice is to link the fire once again, following in the footsteps of those who came before. To become the next Lord of Cinder, a sacrifice will be made to reignite the flame and extend the Age of Fire. This act is not without its cost, for it will be the Ashen One's soul that fuels the fire, binding them to its will for all eternity. The choice to link the fire is an act of selflessness, a decision to carry the weight of a dying world and prolong its existence, even at the cost of one's own life. However, this choice is not without its complications. The Ashen One is well aware of the toll that the flame has taken on those who came before. Gwyn, the first Lord of Cinder, sacrificed himself to prolong the Age of Fire, and in doing so became a hollowed figure, bound to the flame for eternity. Other lords, such as Aldrich and Yorn the Giant, have been consumed by the fire, losing their humanity in the process. The flame may give life, but it also takes it. The Age of Fire has come at a terrible cost, and to link the fire once more is to accept that cycle, to choose stability over change, even if it means endless suffering. The second option is to let the fire die, allowing the first flame to burn out and usher in the Age of Dark. This choice is both terrifying and liberating. It represents the end of the cycle, the end of the Age of Fire that has defined the world for so long. By choosing to let the flame die, the Ashen One would bring about the long-awaited end of an era, one marked by decay, death, and endless rebirth. The Age of Dark, as it is sometimes referred to, is an age of uncertainty, an age of change and chaos. The darkness that follows the extinguishing of the flame is not an evil force, but a natural progression, the world's next stage in its endless cycle. Letting the fire die would end the suffering of those who have been trapped by the flame. The Ashen One would not be bound to the flame's endless cycle of sacrifice, but this choice comes with its own dangers. The Age of Dark is unknown, and while it might represent freedom from the flame cycle, it could also usher in a time of utter destruction. Without the flame, life would be difficult to sustain, and the world might fall into complete ruin. The Firekeeper, the woman who has guided the Ashen One throughout their journey, seems to see the potential of this choice. She speaks of tiny embers in the darkness that refuse to die, symbols of hope perhaps, but also remnants of the flame that may never fully disappear. The final option is to usurp the flame, to take the fire for oneself, and in doing so become the Lord of Hollows, a being who embodies both light and dark, fire and dark soul. This choice represents an unprecedented break from the tradition of linking the flame. Rather than allowing the fire to die or sacrifice oneself to reignite it, the Ashen One would seize control of the flame, shaping it into something new. The idea of becoming the Lord of Hollows is an intriguing one, for it suggests the possibility of transcending the endless cycle that has defined the world. It is a radical act, one that could reshape the very fabric of existence. However, this path comes with moral ambiguity. The Ashen One would not be saving the world through self-sacrifice or allowing it to die, but rather through sheer force of will, bending the cosmic order to their desires. This path, though tempting, carries its own dark implications. To become the Lord of Hollows would mean embracing the dark soul, the very essence of humanity's potential. This is not a decision made lightly. It involves working with the mysterious Uria of Londa, who represents a faction dedicated to transcending the cycles of fire and dark. Uria's influence is both seductive and dangerous, for she is not merely seeking to break the cycle but to usurp the flame itself, to control it in a way that was never intended. In doing so, the Ashen One would become something entirely new, neither fully of the light nor the dark, but a being who embodies both. The usurpation of the flame is a decision that questions the very nature of power, destiny, and free will. It forces the player to confront the consequences of seizing control of a cosmic force, to become the ruler of both light and dark. But even in victory, there are no easy answers. The Ashen One would be bound by their new role, not as a Lord of Cinder, but as a figure who commands both the light and the dark, bringing a new, uncertain age into existence. Whether this choice would bring salvation or further suffering is unclear. The future is uncertain, and the Ashen One's actions will have lasting consequences for the world. The choice to link the fire, let it die, or usurp it is the final decision the Ashen One must make. Each choice represents a different vision for the future, a different philosophy about what is worth preserving. The Age of Fire has been a time of heroism, sacrifice, and decay, but is it worth preserving at all costs? The Age of Dark represents an uncertain future, a time of change, but can humanity truly survive without the light? And the Lord of Hollows represents a break from the past, a chance to forge a new destiny, but at what cost? The Ashen One's decision will shape the fate of the world. It is a decision that questions the nature of heroism, duty, and legacy. The world is on the brink of destruction, and only the Ashen One can decide whether to restore it, let it fade into darkness, or create a new order entirely. As they stand before the first flame, the weight of this choice becomes clear. The fate of the world lies in their hands, and no matter what choice they make, there will be no turning back. The story of Dark Souls 3 is one of profound themes, of cycles that never end, of endless sacrifices, and of the burden of choices that shape the very fabric of existence. From the first flame that birthed the world to the final moments where the Ashen One stands before it, every step of this journey is a confrontation with fate, destiny, and the nature of light and dark. The world, forever on the brink of destruction, faces its final choice, whether to continue the cycle of fire or to embrace the unknown future that awaits. The Ashen One's quest is not just one of physical trials, but of philosophical reflection. Should the fire be reignited, allowing the cycle to persist? Or is it time to let it die and step into the dark unknown? And in the end, is it possible to break free from the shackles of tradition and create something entirely new? These questions are not only central to the Dark Souls series, but resonate deeply with us as individuals, forcing us to confront our own choices, sacrifices, and the consequences of our actions. As the final battle concludes and the fate of the world hangs in the balance, we are reminded of the game's central themes, that even in the darkest times, there is always a choice. The future is not set in stone. It is shaped by the decisions we make and the paths we choose to walk. And so, our journey through the world of Dark Souls 3 comes to an end. The Ashen One has made their decision, and the world is forever changed by their choice. Whether it is the light of the first flame or the shadow of darkness that now dominates, the legacy of the world will live on through those who carry its torch. Thank you for joining me on this epic adventure through one of the most complex and haunting narratives in gaming history. I hope this journey through the lore has helped you relax and drift off into a peaceful sleep. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Dark Souls 3, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Games Lore to sleep. Until next time, fellow adventurer, rest well, and may your dreams be filled with the epic tales of the worlds we explore.